Welcome to episode 82 of the Inside the FLX podcast presented by FingerLakes1.com. Today we're joined by Jim Bruni, Seneca Falls Central School District Administrator of Business and Operations, as well as District Superintendent Bob McKeveny. Thank you both for being here today. Obviously, capital project, capital improvements, that's the subject. Talk to us a little bit about where we stand right now in the process.
So the Seneca Falls Central School District Board of Education on October 30th passed a resolution authorizing a community referendum on a proposed capital improvement project. That resolution authorized a public vote on December 19th from 2 to 8 p.m. in the Minders Academy front lobby for the community to weigh in on the proposal that is being put in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Now, this has been a years-long process. Speak to the length of time that you guys have spent getting to this point.
So it's somewhat of a fluid process. So many people in the community will remember when we completed the large project that included the windows at the high school, the front entrance of the high school, the field, the track. As soon as that project was completed, the district engaged stakeholders with surveys and feedback on what do we want to be looking at or planning ahead for the future. And so whether it would be parent groups or district steering committee or faculty and staff, community members, that generated a list that obviously was forwarded to our Board of Education. And over the past year, our Board of Education have considered that list and worked it down to a manageable number that would work from a financial resource perspective to be able to address some of those things that we would consider needs in the district.
Mm-hmm. Now, talk to us a little bit about, one of you, the nuts and bolts, the dollars and cents. What is going before voters? What are they looking at from dollars and cents perspective?
So going in front of the voters in December, realistically, we're looking at a $13.9 million project. Okay, and roughly when you take a look at $13.9 million, we are looking at about a local share of about $2.3 million. Okay, so when we take a look at that and think, how much would it be coming back to our local taxpayers? At this point, you're looking at 2.3. The nice thing about it is we have about 2.4 million in the local building reserve for our capital projects. Mm-hmm. So at this point, there would be no additional tax impact due to the fact that the 2.3 is saved at this point.
Now, how much of an eye-opener was it for, obviously both of you have been with the district for a number of years now. That must have been sort of like, wow, when the results, the surveys, the realities start to set in. What was that like? Well,
I think the first thing you do is you kind of sift out needs from wants. Mm-hmm. And you can certainly make a case for everything. And about 55 items were forwarded to the Board of Education for consideration. And at that point, we really look at it from a couple of avenues. So we have some themes we use. Obviously, core mission of education. We look at the enhancement of the educational program. But then we really look at three other areas: health and safety, maintenance, and efficiencies. And very often in our annual budget, we cannot handle those things. So those are types of things that we bring forward into a capital project. So it's really that educational program plus those other three factors. And that's how those were broken down.
Mm-hmm. Now, how difficult is it to actually prioritize? So picking you have to sort of cherry pick north of 55 items. That's a lot to sift through, and obviously you can't accomplish all of them in one fell swoop. So what was that process like, and how difficult was it?
I think you looked at kind of a filtering system that said, how do we want to be educating kids in 21st century classrooms that prepares them to go on, say, post-secondary education, career in the workforce, and what do we want those learning spaces to look like? Because quite frankly, learning in classrooms is not the same today as it was even 10 or 15 years ago. So how can we restructure those learning spaces to meet those needs? So obviously that was first and foremost. That's what kind of led us to looking at all the science classrooms in our high school. And how can we create those 21st century learning spaces that would best prepare kids to learn in science classroom environments or labs, and to be able to interact appropriately with some of the skills that they need in the current day. We also, in the high school, looked at phys ed, That gym needs to be addressed, but we looked at that from three parts. From the school perspective, it affects the instructional program, but that's a large use room in the district, probably used every day by the community. And so we take that into consideration as well. And so the fact of the matter is we really look at that educational program part first.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, the raw condition of some of the facilities was certainly from the taxpayer, that's probably going to be one of the more tangible physical things that they notice. How important is it to keep facilities up to date, not just from like the educational standpoint, but also from the safety standpoint?
Correct, and I think that's the important thing when Bob speaks about the list of 55 things to really go through that came through our list, and I think that's what comes down to wants and needs, and there are several items that are going into this are needs because it has to be fixed. I think you take a look at things, I think you'll go through it towards the end, but we're talking about little things like bathrooms, hot water heaters, right? Things like that we can't do on an everyday budget that we hold. So we need things like this, like in a capital project, to fit it in. Paving, milling and paving is very expensive. Again, things that we can't do every day, but it's safety, health, maintenance, and that's the important part.
And I think this is where the Board of Education comes into play. So they would look at, say, milling and paving of driveways and parking areas. If we do that in an annual budget, it's dollar for dollar. If we do it in a capital project, we get 83% aid on that. So we're really paying 17 cents on the dollar. So you look at it from that perspective, it's a much better way to do some of these health and safety and maintenance and efficiency things in a project as opposed to in an annual budget. Just much more fiscally responsible, and that's kudos to our Board of Education.
Now, that seems like it's worth mentioning one more time. I think you mentioned it already. No additional cost to taxpayers, right?
Correct. So since the last big project, the board plans out, one of the core responsibilities of a Board of Education is to make sure it maintains the physical plant. And so the physical property, the physical plant of the school district is a responsibility of the district and the Board of Education, which takes that seriously and understands that they're using taxpayer dollars. So from the last project to now, they have carefully put money into the capital building reserve to get to the point, as we are now, where we can take that forward to the voters to say, we need your authorization in order to do some of this work. So you take things such as the bus garage, 2 failing grades on the last 2 building condition surveys by New York State. We've known we've had to take care of that. We've looked at different options, but right now with the work that's being done in this project, we qualify for maximum building aid. And so the fact is, the people in this community would know it's not our intent to go to the community to request more tax dollars, but to take care of the physical plant, which benefits us all as a community.
So, jumping right off of that, let's start talking about the actual facilities and what the upgrades are, or what the construction is going to be that's buried inside of this this proposal. Start with that bus garage. It seems like the biggest eyesore within the packet itself that was shown in the media.
And it has been for a while, but in the interest of jumping too quick, we've looked at other various options, various studies, ways to do things with the existing structure, and it's just come to the point where with the work we're doing now, getting maximum aid, we have been given basically direction to say, if you demolish that building and reconstruct it, you will qualify for the maximum aid, as opposed to renovating it where we wouldn't get maximum building aid. So that's led the board to say timing is now. Now the other thing is it's antiquated, so it doesn't allow us some of what other districts may do. We don't purchase larger sized buses because we can't service them. They barely fit in the bay. We don't have enough storage or enough area to actually have supplies to be able to fix our buses in a timely manner. And so the fact of the matter is we also want to make it so that parents and people in the community know where can they go. Right now, as you well know, Josh, you have to walk around the tennis courts, around the back of the building just to get inside, and with any luck there, you'll see somebody. We need to open that up. That's a big part of our district. I mean, we bring kids back and forth to school safely every day, and right now it's time for us to address that.
And obviously not the only facility sort of in this list. Katie Stanton also, correct?
Yes, and Katie Stanton, you can obviously, you're probably pulling up the pictures right now, but minimum work at Katie Stanton. You'll see a couple pictures coming up here where it kind of goes through the window shades, which doesn't seem like a big thing, but it really is, because we do a lot of our large group instruction, trainings, parent group meetings. So you'll see a couple pictures in there that were never fixed in the other capital projects. And then obviously if you continue through, you'll see in Katie Stanton, you can see some of the pictures of the bathrooms. That was in the first couple slides, and you can see some of the pictures that we kind of really need to address now.
I think people really need to like soak this in for a minute, because this was the thing that stood out to me when I was going through the slides, because I was a student there 20 plus years ago, and that is exactly the way it was when I was there, and probably for several years prior to that also. Yep. Speak to one of you. Speak to how important these projects are in relation to. These aren't frivolous build-outs or frivolous. I mean, these are upgrades that in theory will last for decades if past is any indication. What is that like, that side of it?
Well, I think that's where we kind of separate the wants and needs. We get to a point where this is really what we want. This is a need. This has to get done. This is something where you start thinking about health and safety. This is the number one basically picture you can take a look at.
And as far as the restrooms go, it gets to a point in time where if you don't address it, it's actually going to cost you more on an annual basis with some of those repairs and water and so on. Mm-hmm. So the fact of the matter is this helps us become a little more efficient in our annual budgets. Mm-hmm. So it's not just there at Katie Stanton. We're pretty careful, and the board is pretty careful about not being frivolous about doing projects. So the fact of the matter is it's time now to address that. If I could just address one of the bigger pieces at Katie Stanton. Yes. In a previous project, we had built a pickup and drop-off point in the back of the building.
Well, one more, Josh.
Which yep. worked really well. However, from that time to now, we have experienced a big daily congestion at pickup time. Mm-hmm. We have a number of parents that drop off and pick up their kids, and we're glad to accommodate that. But what we have to do, it's become somewhat of an unsafe condition where there's a lot of congestion. If we can move some of the vehicles out of there and to the front of the building, it will open up more opportunity to be a true pickup and drop-off location in the back. So the concept in this project to ease that congestion, which is an issue now, but we know we have to take into a project, is to potentially move more teacher parking up front, so that we can truly accommodate parents and guests in the back of the building, and also be able to pick kids up safely as they exit the building in the back. So the current green space in the front of the building would turn into a parking lot to accommodate more teacher cars. As everyone in the community knows, we're somewhat landlocked at Katie Stanton, so we need to maximize parking there, but also be able to make sure that we are dropping kids off and picking them up in the most safe and efficient manner.
Right. Now, jumping over to, I believe Frank Knight is the next school on our list here to talk about in terms of this project and what's going on. Speak to a little bit about what's happening here.
Okay, and I think Bob actually mentioned this at the beginning when we talked about potential universal pre-K programs, and that's extremely important in our district and something we've been looking forward to providing. Again, we're one of the districts in the region that does not get funding for UPK, and a lot of people will ask, why don't you have a program? And it really comes down to the funding. We're just not one of those that have it. But I think creating spaces for the future is what we have to be ready for when the funding does come. And I think this is a good opportunity in this capital project to create those learning spaces. And there was a lot of ways to take a look at this where and you'll show a couple slides in, like that was one opportunity to build on. Obviously that's the number one goal, is try to increase, but to then take a step back and say, are there other items within that building that we can maybe make work and save a little bit of money in that case and put that money in other classrooms? So that's why you'll see on the next slide of the potential, if it ever came to that, of utilizing that yellow box there, which is currently the district office, which actually way back in the day was actual
classroom space.
So this was a perfect opportunity where the board said, how can we be fiscally responsible? To build 2 classrooms on in the back of Frank Knight would have soaked up a lot of funding. But can we look at other options and be able to stretch that dollar to be able to do more work within this project? So that was where we looked at different options.
Mm-hmm. Now, some of the interesting, so even something as simple as an HVAC unit, if not appropriately cared for over the long term, and even just as it ages, becomes an incredible expense that just can't be simply doled out in one budget cycle.
Exactly. So when we talked about the milling and paving and all those other items that we take a look at, code. This is one of those items too. If that were to ever break, and it's really coming to its shelf life at this point, that were ever to break during the year, that would go in our general fund budget, and that's something we can't prepare for. So being able to fit this in this current capital project, just like you said, will give us the opportunity to have that for a longer period of time and not cost as much, because obviously we would get aid on it.
Right. Now, jumping forward to the middle school, go right ahead.
So the middle school, there are some minor renovations there. So we use the middle school gym as our main event center, as everyone in town knows. So we're looking to do some restroom renovations in that hallway, which, as you said with Katie Stanton, probably timing is perfect so that we can address it through this project. And the only other piece is we want to create some more supervision opportunities through the boys' locker room. And so in our previous capital project, where we did a nice display area in the hallway there for like our Minders Academy Athletic Hall of Fame, we have display cases. We were not able to provide an opportunity for that supervision. So the yellow is more of a supervision window for the coach or for the teacher. Right now they have to go out and around, and so there's no direct access there. So we want to create that access. Minor revisions, but here's another way that the board really looked at this. We looked at, should we change locker rooms, should we do this? But what's the most cost effective and the most fiscally responsible is to maybe engage in a project like this, and so that we have other funds to address some other health and safety and maintenance issues.
And it kind of looks like you guys were really adamantly trying to get the most bang for your buck possible in this project. Stepping forward to Minders Academy, of course, the crown jewel of the district, so to speak. Talk to us about what might be seen there.
So the science classrooms, as I said earlier, we've had people come back through in reunion groups and say these look exactly the same, and they do, and they're functional and they work, and our students get a great education. But a project affords us the opportunity to create that 21st century learning space, more interactive, be able to participate more labs, demos, work closely with the teacher, work with peers, and that's exactly the learning environments they're going to go into in the workforce and also in post-secondary. So we're looking forward to having an opportunity to redesign our science locations at Minders.
And I think it bears mentioning that some of these photos, some people might be looking at this right now and saying, well, that doesn't look that bad. That doesn't look that bad. But when you compare it to what, in theory, they should be looking like, in 2017, 2018, 2019. There's a huge, huge, huge difference.
And I think the graphic at the top of this slide is a perfect example. So the top left is what we were probably all used to going into, and that worked very well for us. But as you said, Josh, in 2017, we really want to look at 21st century learning because that would afford them skills to leave us and be highly successful. So spacing, to be able to learn at different rates and pace. And so if you look at that, the graphic is a perfect depiction of what a lot of our teachers are doing now in the spaces that they're in, but we need to take it one more step so that we can address this from a science perspective.
Now, obviously, stepping back now, we can show everyone's face again. What does the actual timeline look like on this proposal if approved by voters next month? Obviously no tax increase, no additional cost, but obviously something that's going to take years.
Correct. So I think, if there is a timeline on that last page, but I'll just kind of run through it a little bit because it did start back in August when the Board of Education had a chance to take a look at this and through a presentation. And then realistically work through that point of how do we get from this point to where we are now. So we did start in August on this presentation in September. We did go through the review process and the resolution you can see up there.
Yep.
And I think the biggest thing is now getting the word out to the community, and I think it's doing programs like this, sending out the newsletters, having community presentations, which is really the most important part about what we do is getting the word out and explaining why this needs to happen. And then you can take a look at the public hearing on December 7th when the community can come out and hear us. And then also on December 19th is getting out and voting. And really, that's the important part is, getting out there, reading the actual referendum and just understanding what we're trying to do and know that it's important. You can see below as it talks about the timelines as it continues. Obviously, everywhere we have it there is approximate because we just don't know, but it could take up to 12 months for state ed to review something like this and the architectural drawings and getting all that approved and then going out to bid. So that's a rough time frame when I look at something like that and I say, okay, it could be roughly spring 2019 as we start. Now, could this go over a couple years? It all depends on how things work. We haven't had the design process yet, but that's a potential timeline that we see it.
And the really key piece that we've used in Seneca Falls for that if we vote in December, this goes to the architects and state ed for the next 12 months. If it comes back approved, we're actually able to bid that project next winter. Mm-hmm. And that's generally when we can get best prices and allow us to do the most work. And that served this district well. So if you think back to the big project that we did in 09-10, it's the exact same process. Our goal is to get this thing back in winter so we can bid it, and then in the spring really get rolling. So there's a little bit of time there, but it's been a tried and true process that we've used. And our goal for people in this community is to be informed. Mm-hmm. They are to be empowered to come out and vote. We just want to make sure they have the right information. Right. And we need, they are the ones that make the decision on whether we go forward or not with the project.
Mm-hmm. Now, that said, last question here, make the pitch. So tell us why this is important. And I want each of you to, because I think you both bring a little something different to the table here right now. Bob, we'll start with you.
So I'll go at it from the educational, the community point. And I think we pitched this back when we did the big project, and we're going to do it again. If you go back to those four main themes, our core mission is education. And I believe the people in this community place great value in the school district and what kids receive. And so the fact of the matter is, if we can continue to take care of that, know that kids are in school facilities that are up to date, current, and can learn, that provide them skills that allow them to be successful, I think our Board of Education then looks very responsible to the community. From the other point, though, we recognize that we have very much a school district that is community-based, and we open up the doors to the community every time. One of our previous board members, Pete Wormuth, I'll quote him, our school district needs to be a beacon of light in this community. And so the fact of the matter is we've opened our doors to the community, whether it be the stage and performing arts, whether it be athletics, whether it be the community center, or whether it be scouts. They have the ability to use the school facilities. So for us to do some of the maintenance and some of the things that allow us to be efficient continues to allow us to open our doors to the community and make it a true community-based school district.
And Jim?
Yeah, I think, and again, I come with this with a different perspective of looking at money. But then when I take a look at not money, what we can do now, it's more the things that could break currently. And that's where I get nervous about of the general budget, what we can actually fit in today's general budget. Mm-hmm. And so when I take a look at health, safety, and maintenance and what we can do in this capital project that could take us to that next level where our budgets can perform the way they're supposed to and not have to be reactive because something breaks or is not working. So I think looking at this project, $13.9 million, again, costing $2.3 million, no additional taxpayer implications. I think the important part to take away from is what we're getting out of that $13.9. Mm-hmm. Could it have been $40 million? Sure, but it's not something that this Board of Ed and this community needs right now. I think we need to have a facility that is safe, that runs well, that provides the best education for our students, that had great learning environments, and we talked about the number one thing, community use as well. And obviously we got a lot of use out of the sports field, but now we're talking about getting use out of the auditorium. In one of the slides we talked about redoing the floors and the lighting. We also talked about the bus garage, having a place where people can go and get more information. So I think this is a really nice project that fits in all different areas between the each building. It kind of will put us to that next level where we can start focusing on other classrooms, and we're pretty excited about it.
So if I could just, what we would like to do is make sure people are informed. So Jim and I are going to conduct another presentation tonight at the middle school library at 6:30. The public hearing is on December 7th at 7 p.m., right at the beginning of that board meeting. We would invite people to visit our website. We will have all the materials there. We will furnish a newsletter so that residents get additional information. And we certainly welcome the opportunity for residents to reach out to us if they're looking for additional information.
Mm-hmm. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time, obviously coming in, you guys talking about this, speaking to it intelligently, and sort of debunking what might be some of the myths out there or some of the concerns.
So just want to wrap up with December 19th, 2 to 8 p.m., Minders Academy front lobby. And thank you, Josh, and thanks to all the residents.
Yes,
awesome.
Thank you, Josh.
Yep. So that's going to do it for us today. I'd like to thank Bob, Jim, our listeners, and of course, FingerLakes1.com for making this podcast possible. Inside the FLX airs Sundays at 7 p.m. on Spectrum Channel 12 and is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and the FingerLakes1.com app. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.